What's up, everybody? It's Carl's Collects Comics, and I'm back with another top 10 list. This time I'm going to be talking about the top 10 dark future comic stories that you should consider adding to your collection. So stay tuned. For this video, I'm going to be talking about the top 10 dark future comic stories that you should consider adding to your comic collection. Now, this is a little bit different than the types of top 10 videos I've done in the past, because I think I've only done one or two of these before. This is going to just be focused on certain comic storylines as opposed to comic characters. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun putting it together. It was inspired by an old Wizard magazine article that I had seen, and it reminded me that there were some really cool dark future storylines that are out there. You know, a lot of times these are ones that are going to be 50, 60 years in the future of the current comic timeline. So finding some of these was, like I said, it was a lot of fun. So I hope that you're going to get as much fun out of it and enjoyment as I did putting it together. So let's go ahead and get it started, right? Alright, so number 10 on my list of the top 10 dark future comic storylines that you should consider adding to your collection is Spider-Man Reign. And it's a mini-series. It was issues 1 through 4. And it tells the story of an aged, broken down Peter Parker who comes out of semi-retirement where he's working at a flower shop when an oppressive police force begins destroying his beloved Manhattan. He has a showdown with Venom and then makes a final graveyard promise to a long-dead Mary Jane that he will continue as Spider-Man. So this storyline is perhaps best known for the backstory explaining Mary Jane's passing. Years of intercourse between the two led to the radioactive bodily fluids of Spider-Man poisoning her and leading to her death. So it's definitely a dark read, as it is The Dark Knight meets Spider-Man. So this 4-part 2006 miniseries was written and drawn by Kara Andrews, and it's a fairly easy to find set. Recent eBay sets have been plentiful at the $24.95 price point. With it being this readily available and affordable, I would just make sure that you get a really clean, nice copy. You might even consider buying a brick from a local comic shop during one of their sales. Bearing all that in mind, I'm setting the Target collector's price at $25 for the entire set, raw and high grade. Another quick note about this is that issue number 1 had 2 different covers that were split 50% down the middle. The black suit variant, it wasn't a ratio, so it's just as available as the regular red and blue. So it's more of like a preference thing than it is any kind of rarity to it. So just that quick note on issue number 1 for Spider-Man Reign. Number 9 on my list is V for Vendetta, and that's issues 1 through 10. So many comic fans are aware of this groundbreaking piece of political social commentary from the 2005 film starring Natalie Portman and Hugo Weaving. As phenomenal as the film adaptation is, the 10-part comic limited series is a must-read if dark future or politically tinged stories are your thing. Now here's the fun part. Regardless of your political persuasion, this story will scratch the itch for both sides of the aisle because it works quite well as an across-the-aisle piece of commentary. The main character V is expertly put on display through the eyes of Evie, and his quest to bring down the British government of the future and create fertile soil for a new democracy is a timeless tale put down on paper by master writer Alan Moore with art by David Lloyd. So this book is a bit more of a feat to collect, so it's going to run you a little bit more. Keep in mind, it is 10 issues. I'd suggest picking up a collected edition of all 10 issues for roughly $15, via eBay or half-price books, just so you can know if you really like it before you make the commitment of buying the entire run. I did the same thing myself personally with Watchmen, which is a 12-issue limited series, and those back issues are more expensive, so I got the collected edition first, read it, really enjoyed it, and then I went on the hunt for the individual issues. So I suggest the same tactic here. So if you really like it, the entire run can be had for about $120 in high grade, or if you decide to piece it together yourself, roughly $10 per issue. So I'm setting the Target collector's price at $10 per issue in raw high grade, or between $100 and $120 for the full run, raw and in high grade. Number 8 on my list is Old Man Logan. So this is an 8-part series, and it's the basis for the 2017 film from filmmaker James Mangold. This is a dark future tale of Wolverine's last adventure across a decimated United States, and it's definitely a true marvel. Written by Mark Millar with artwork by Steve McNiven, this story delivers on every outlandish mental promise you might have. Alright, so this is a 2008 8-issue story arc that begins with Wolverine number 66 and goes through issue number 72, as well as Wolverine Old Man Logan Giant Size number 1. Now prices are going to vary wildly, but with the popularity of Wolverine and the X-Men, this series has held value well past its release. There's multiple variants and printings, so my suggestion here would be the same as some of the other storylines on this list. Look for a collected edition first to see how you like the story. If you really like it, you can then begin to assemble the full run. I personally would set a Target collector's price of $25 for just Wolverine number 66, which is considered the first appearance of Old Man Logan, and then $8 per issue thereafter in high grade raw, giving you a budget of roughly $80 to build the entire 8-issue run. Now keep in mind that pricing can vary greatly with this many variants or printings for a popular run, but I always say to always count on cover A first print. So $80 should be enough to get you a full run, again in high grade. And like I've said before, this particular run, it's not a very rare run, so don't get FOMO or get caught up in I have to have it now. Bide your time, look for a good deal, and chances are you're going to find it well under my Target collector's price. Number 7 on my list is Akira, and this is something I'm doing a little bit different. I'm not actually going to point out any of the either Japanese or the American reprints, which would be American first prints and are collectible in and of themselves. I'm actually going to focus in on just the 35th anniversary boxed set. So there's been many different printings, releases, and packaging for the Akira storyline, which is set in Neo Tokyo. Created by Katsuhiro Otomo, this series is largely responsible for a boom in manga during the 1980s, which resulted in the mainstream placement for the genre in today's pop culture landscape. Akira tells the story of Tetsuo and Shotaro, friends who become rivals in the rebuilt city of Neo Tokyo after nuclear devastation. Also well worth checking out is the 1988 anime adaptation, a feat in and of itself. So while there's a ton of options available, my suggestion is to look for the 35th anniversary boxed set, which includes 6 volumes, all hardbound, and you know I'm a hardbound fan, and is widely available for $115 to $150 in varying conditions. So this isn't the normal type of collectible I'd recommend on this channel, but a lot of times these later printings have cleaner, clearer graphics than the original printings, and in the case of Akira, there's so many printings and variations and reprintings between the two countries because it did originate overseas, so even the American first printings would still be considered reprints in a foreign language, and only for the most advanced collector would I recommend going after Japanese, foreign language first printings, because that can get really dicey, it can get very pricey, and it can get kind of difficult to keep up with. So that's why I wanted to include it on the list, because it's such a classic, and if you haven't read it or watched the movie, I highly recommend doing so, because I really think you'll enjoy it. But if you're just looking for just a really nice copy to have, this anniversary set is the nicest that I found. So, and then the box is really nice, great stuff to pick up. So number 6 on my list is Hulk Future Imperfect, and this is issues 1 and 2. So the Future Hulk, aka Maestro, completely takes over the entire world and institutes his own totalitarian government. But when 1993 era Hulk arrives, a great battle ensues, and after multiple casualties, the younger Hulk is victorious. This story by Peter David, with art by the late George Perez, was 2 prestige issues and is readily available for those who want to see a Hulk-centric future, dark future tale. So this 2-issue set is readily available in a variety of conditions across eBay. You can find it for as low as $10 for the set, raw and in decent grade, probably mid-grade. But I would probably go ahead and spend a little extra to, which is why I set the Target collector's price at $20 for a high-grade set, a high-grade raw set of both books. Now, of course, just like everything else, you can always find graded copies of these books, but it's going to run you just a lot more. So my recommendation for this one, $20 high-grade raw set, but do keep in mind they're perfect bound, so if you want a reader's copy, get a collector's edition to go with it. Number 5 on my list of the top 10 dark future comic storylines to add to your collection is Y: The Last Man. Now this I'm spotlighting issues 1 through 60. So this intriguing series plotted the end of the world through the unique perspective of a world devastated by a plague that targeted all males. As the last living man in existence, you would think it might make for great dating odds, but instead, Yorick Brown is pursued by all stripes of women who have set out to kill him. This book was an indie darling for a while, but with the cancellation of the streaming series, it's definitely gone down in value, i.e. now is a great time to consider picking up the full run if you should feel inclined to do so. I would set the Target collector's price of $130 for the entire run if you're seeking to get all 60 issues in high grade. You can also spring for the full collected editions in either 10 softcover volumes, available at about $30, which is a steal, or 5 hardcover volumes for around $60. Either way, it's an affordable, complete story by Brian K. Vaughan and Pia Guerrera. Number 4 on my list is the infamous, legendary Days of Future Past story from Uncanny X-Men number 141 and 142. So this landmark storyline features the end of the X-Men at the hands of Sentinels in the future, and it stars an aged Kitty Pryde transported back in time to try to stop the events which will lead to her teammates' deaths. Jam-packed into 2 issues, this story is pretty much peak X-Men with deft scripting by Chris Claremont and gritty artwork by John Byrne. The collected edition has many printings and variations, so it can be found for around $10. However, if you want the original 2 issues, Uncanny X-Men number 141 and number 142, be prepared to spend some money. Upper mid-grade copies of each book can be found for around $40 to $60, grade and dealer dependent, but the good news is that even though this is a pricier book, they are plentiful. There's no shortage of copies to choose from, so don't get caught up in grabbing the first one that you come across. This is one to keep an eye out for. That's why I'm setting the Target collector's price for the 2-issue set at no more than $95 for a 7.0 to 8.0 copy of each of the books. Now, some people, again, may scoff at the pricing, but the reality is I think you're going to pay an unnecessary premium if you try to get 9.0 and above. 7.0 to 8.0 are still really nice, crisp copies, some spine dents, maybe some non-pressable defects, some color-breaking spine ticks on them, but you can find really clean copies. And like I said, the maximum I would pay for this 2-issue set would be $95, given the current comic market. But I really do feel like if you keep your eyes open and maybe go to a convention with cash in hand, you can probably find these 2 issues for a lot less. They might even throw in a collected edition. But again, just my opinion. Number 3 on my list is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. So this is Superman number 423 and Action Comics number 583. And this is a classic end-of-the-road storyline that finds Superman besieged by his enemies and left for dead floating through Antarctica, only to re-emerge under an assumed name and identity at the end of the story. Now, many consider this to be a classic Superman tale with writing by Alan Moore and art by Curt Swan. That being said, these books are very plentiful and as such don't command a high price. Each book can be found readily for around $10, so I'm setting the Target collector's price for both books at just $20 for high-grade raw copies. And while it is set low, I believe you can probably find these 2 books for even less from the right shop or dealer in the right situation. Again, very common. eBay was flooded with these books, so I do recommend shopping around before you go ahead and buy. They're not rare. Number 2 on my list is Kingdom Come, and that's issues 1 through 4. So this is the Book of Revelation from the Christian Bible, retold in the world of DC Comics superheroes. It's a novel concept that grabbed my attention upon its release back in 1996. This apocalyptic 4-part Elseworlds storyline by Mark Waid and Alex Ross explores the future of superheroes in which humans like Bruce Wayne, Billy Batson, and Lex Luthor have joined forces against metahumans after the newest generation of superpowered individuals runs amok and causes mass destruction, bringing Superman and others out of retirement. Whew, that's a mouthful. Epic storyline, well worth picking up. It's brilliantly written and beautifully painted. This series redefined dark future tales by bringing a new dawn of hope into the mix. This 4-issue set can be found on eBay for $25 to $35 in high-grade raw, so it's very plentiful. The big trick is to find it in high grade. Due to the perfect bound spines and black covers, the spines and backs, all of it black, this book shows even the smallest spine tick glaringly. As such, I'm setting the Target collector's price for the set at $45, all 4 books, for very clean, high-grade raw copies. You might pay an extra premium, but it's worth it to have them in pristine high grades. I'll say this, mine are not pristine. There are, there's a little bit of corner crunch. If you're going to pay the $45 that I'm setting the Target collector's price at, make sure to look up and down each spine of all 4 books, front, back, and edge on the spine itself, because every little mark is going to show up on these black covers. And like I said, I've said with other books on this list, this is a very common series to come by. So don't get caught up in thinking that you need to buy the first one that you come across. In fact, I think this is almost one that you can probably wait to purchase until you come across a set in person, and you can look at it and inspect it in person. I think, just my advice. Number 1 on my list for the top 10 dark future comic storylines to consider adding to your collection is Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, issues number 1 through 4. So the bleakest and darkest of comic book storylines, right up there next to Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns is a magnum opus to Batman and everything he stands for. Bruce Wayne comes out of retirement to fight a brutal new threat to his beloved Gotham City, enlisting the aid of a new Robin and enticing the long-dormant Joker to return for a final duel. Now, there's not a lot that can be said about this limited series other than that it is one of the quintessential Batman tales and widely considered to be Frank Miller's best comic book work aside from Sin City. I know, some of you will get upset because I didn't include 300, but I'm sorry. Dark Knight Returns is a legend, and it redefined comic books, so I think it ranks higher than pretty much everything else. The eerie artwork by Klaus Janson only adds atmosphere to the proceedings. So this 4-issue miniseries has been collected numerous times and can be found readily for around $10, but if you want the original first print set in raw high grade, be prepared to spend a bit more. I'm setting the Target collector's price at $80 for a high grade raw set of all 4 books. Now keep in mind, these are also perfect bound books, so if you go for a raw high-grade copies, make sure to get yourself a collected edition just for reading, because you will damage the book in order to read it if you get the individual issues, because they're perfect bound. That's just a good tip for all perfect bound books. Now, a note on the pricing for The Dark Knight Returns. Some of you may feel like the pricing is a little bit low for it, but again, what I submit to you is that with cash in hand, the right dealer in the right situation will sell you the books for cash, because cash is king. It still rules, and it's still the best way to do business because it's easy, it's no frills, and you can find yourself a really nice set of books by doing that. So, it's the convention season is every year, so sometimes you can wait and go hunting at a comic convention and find yourself the right set at the right time. So, alright, that is my list of the top 10 Dark Future comic storylines to consider adding to your collection. Thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight and for listening to this. Make sure and hit that like button. Drop a comment. Are there any books, Dark Future storylines, that I left off that you think I should have added? I'd love to hear from you. As always, I do try to respond to each and every single comment. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please make sure and do so. If you have subscribed to the channel but you haven't turned on notifications, make sure to do so that you don't miss out on a single brand new video or live stream. Once again, I'm Carl Collects Comics. Thanks for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.